Okay, second grade. So we've been talking about different ways that we can better understand the story. So last time we talked about how we can read the illustrations, and so how reading the illustrations help us better understand the text. Today we're going to talk about how we can use our schema to better understand this story. So we'll put that right under here. And schema is a new word, and all that means is using our background knowledge, using our background information, what we already know, and bringing that to the text. And so when we're thinking about what we already know, when we're thinking about those things, usually we're thinking about experiences, so where I've been, different things that I've seen, all of those are experiences, and that's included in our schema. So we'll put that under here. And also, when we're thinking about our background knowledge, what I already know, some of the things that you already know come from books, and so text can also be included in our schema. And also, boys and girls, I have a picture to help us remember what schema means. I have a picture of a girl thinking, and that's going to help us remember that schema means that we are thinking about what we already know, we're thinking about our background knowledge. And so today we're going to read, have two texts for us. We're going to read some pages of these texts and see how I can use my schema to better understand the text. So our first book is Frogs by Gail Gibbons. And boys and girls, when I read the word frogs, when I read that title, I'm thinking, what do I already know about frogs? And I think, oh my goodness, I know where frogs live because I've seen them. I've seen them in ponds. I've seen them in my backyard. So that's my experience. And then also, I'm thinking, we read a book together in class about frogs. We read a book called Jump Frog Jump by Robert Kalan. And so that's my text. I'm thinking, those are all those things that I'm thinking. Those are all my background knowledge. And boys and girls, to help me remember my schema, to help me remember what I already know, I'm going to use this web diagram, and I'm going to write down things in my web about what I already know. And this is going to help me because readers, boys and girls, are always thinking about what they already know. Because what they already know helps them understand the text. And so right here I have baby frogs are called tadpoles. So I remember that. And I'm thinking, I remember that when I took a science class, when I was your age, I learned about frogs. And I remember learning that baby frogs are called tadpoles. So that's an experience. I remember that from my science class. And then also, I remember that frogs can live in water and in land. And I remember that from reading our book, Jump Frog Jumps. He jumps from land and water. And I also remember that from the science class I took. And so there we're using both experience and text. And here I have they need water to live. And I remember that because I remember seeing frogs in my backyard. I also remember seeing frogs in ponds. And so they need water to live. I know that already. And then, boys and girls, I have here frogs lay a lot of small eggs. And I remember that from taking the class, my science class when I was your age. And so all of these things, boys and girls, are all background information, and they're all going to help me better understand the text. And so let's get reading. A breeze ripples the surface. The floating clump of eggs is called frog spawn. Frogs lay their eggs in water or wet places. Otherwise, the frogs could dry up and die. Boys and girls, when I see this picture, I think to myself, that's a lot of eggs. And I also think, I already knew that. I knew from the class that I took when I was your age. I took science and I learned about frogs, and I remember learning that frogs lay a lot of eggs. And so that's the connection I'm making. That's a background information that I'm using already to come into the text. And then, boys and girls, when I read the words, frogs lay their eggs in water or wet places, otherwise the eggs could dry up and die, I'm thinking, I know that frogs live near wet areas. They live near ponds, because I've seen them in ponds. And I'm thinking to myself, I already knew that information. I wrote that in my web diagram, that they need water to live, and I also wrote that they live in water or on land. So all of that background information, what I already knew, I'm bringing that into the text, and it helps me understand the text better. I can connect, I understand what's going on. The eggs do not have shells. They are inside jelly-like coverings. As they float, the jelly lets the sun's warmth come through to the eggs inside. Not all the eggs will survive. Most of the time, the large and slimy mass of eggs is too slippery and too big to be eaten. This is nature's way of protecting them, but some of the smaller clusters of eggs will be eaten by creatures living near the pond. Boys and girls, when I read the words, most of the time the large and slimy mass of egg is too slippery and too big to be eaten, I'm thinking in my head about what I wrote here. They're slippery because, see the picture, they're living in water. Remember, I'm thinking, I knew that. I knew that the eggs are in water. I know that frogs live in water on land. And when I read the words, the egg is too slippery, I know that slippery means wet. I know that when I see frogs near the ponds, they're sticky and they're wet. And so my background knowledge helped me better understand what I was reading. And so that's what we use for this book. Now we're going to use another book, because this was a nonfiction book, but we know that our schema can be used for all types of books. It's just not nonfiction. So here I have a fiction book, and we're going to see how this book, how our schema can help us better understand this book. And so the title of this book is The Fire Station. Boys and girls, as soon as I read The Fire Station, I thought of when I was in elementary school, our firemen came to our school and they showed us fire trucks and their uniforms and their helmets and boots, and then they showed us all the things that they had on their fire trucks. Boys and girls, that's my background knowledge. I thought of that when I read The Fire Station. And so like we did for the frog book, I'm going to flip this. We're going to use a web diagram because readers are always thinking about what they know. So to remember what I know, I'm going to write these words down. I'm going to write what I'm thinking down. I remember that firemen slide down on long poles. They told us that when they came to visit. I remember that they have Dalmatians. Now I'm thinking that because I remember from books we read, like Clifford, we've seen that the Dalmatians live inside the firehouse. And so I'll put that down and they have Dalmatians, because that's something I remember. That's something I'm thinking about when I see Fire Station. And I have firemen wear special uniforms. I remember that when the firemen came, they had helmets and they had boots, and they showed us their entire uniform. And then I'm also remembering that they have large red trucks in fire stations, because when they came, they brought their large red truck and they showed us all the parts of their truck. So I'm going to put that right there. So these are all the things I'm thinking about. Even before I read, this is all my background information, my schema. Okay, so let's start reading our book. Michael and Sheila were walking down the street. As they passed the fire station, Sheila said, "Michael, let's go for a ride on a fire truck." "Well," said Michael, "I think maybe I should ask my mother, and I think maybe I should ask my father, and I think we should go in," said Sheila. Then she grabbed Michael's hand and pulled him up to the door. Sheila knocked. Blam, 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 blam. A large fireman came out and asked, "What can I do for you?" "Well," said Michael, "maybe you could show us a fire truck and hoses and rubber boots and ladders and all sorts of stuff like that." "Certainly," said the fireman. "And maybe," said Sheila, "you will let us drive a fire truck." "Certainly not," said the fireman. Boys and girls, I'm seeing some things and I read some things that made me think. When I saw this picture, I thought to myself, when we read the Clifford book, I remember reading and seeing Dalmatians in the fire station. I'm also thinking, when I read the words, "Well," said Michael, "maybe you could show us a fire truck and hoses and rubber boots and ladders and all sorts of stuff like that." When I read those words, I was thinking, I know about all those things. I remember when the firemen came. Remember when I put that in my web diagram. I put that they had special uniforms. I remember the helmets and the big boots. I remember all those things. And so when I read those words and I saw this picture, those things helped me. And the background knowledge that I had already helped me understand the story better. So let's keep reading. They went in and looked at ladders and hoses and big rubber boots. Then they looked at little fire trucks and big fire trucks and enormous fire trucks. When they were done, Michael said, "Let's go." "Right," said Sheila. "Let's go into the enormous fire truck." Again, boys and girls, I see this picture of the red fire truck, and it makes me think of when the firemen came to visit. They brought their huge fire truck, and on the fire truck, they had hoses and ladders, and when I read the words, they went in and looked at ladders and hoses and big rubber boots. It made me think of that experience. I remember, and I used my background information to help me better understand what I was reading. So, boys and girls, we talked today, we read 2 books. We read Frogs by Gail Gibbons, and we read The Fire Station by Robert Munch. And those 2 books, we saw how we could use our schema. We thought about our experiences, we thought about the texts and different books we've already read, and we realized that using that background knowledge helps us better understand the book. And so next time when we go into your independent reading, I'm going to ask you guys to make a web diagram like I did today. And you're going to be thinking about your background knowledge, what you already know, even before you read the book. And you're going to see how it helps you understand the text. Okay, I'm done. Okay, I'm done.
You done?
Yeah. How long was that?
About 13 something.